Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of The Handmaid's Tale Season 5, Episode 3. We're a decent ways into the season at this point, and it really feels like we've got a serious Batman, the Joker vibe kind of going on right now with Serena and June, where it's like even when you want to escape each other, you just constantly come back into each other's orbit.
I've also seen a lot of polls online of people being like, are you team Serena or team June? Which I thought was really weird, but it's really interesting to see how divided people are that, June is supposed to be the hero of this story and where she's gotten to. There are some people that are like, I'm out on June now.
We're going to talk about what happens to Serena now when she has her new title of ambassador, which is really just the get out of Gilead, you're a woman title.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a beef with that. There's something that's just not making sense with this.
Well, as we dive in and talk about all of this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We are here after every episode of The Handmaid's Tale talking all about what happens. We're also discussing the premiere of Andor a little bit later today. So if you love Star Wars and the greater universe of 2000 Star Wars shows, be sure to check that out as well.
We're also covering House of the Dragon every Sunday night. We have a new video up here, and also follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Jess TV. Okay, before I get into my beef with what is going on with Serena being sort of cast out of Gilead, I thought we would talk about Aunt Lydia and everything that's going on there, because she is very upset about what Esther did. We saw her slap her while she is unconscious in the hospital. Anybody else now see the hospitals in Gilead and you start singing Belinda Carlisle? Because I do every single time now. But anyways, she went to Janine, who was in a coma, and she made some promises to God about change and changing and doing better for the handmaids and doing better in general and making some serious changes. And then when Mrs. Putnam brought Angela there, and it did end up helping Janine, I feel, and she ends up coming out of her coma. Now we're in a situation where you gotta pay up, Aunt Lydia. You really need to actually be there for these women.
I think that Aunt Lydia, I hesitate to say this because I know what sort of show we're talking about here, but I do think that on some level, Aunt Lydia is actually going to try to actively change a little bit. I don't think she isn't capable of finding a way to get better. I think that her biggest problem is obviously she tries to find a way to justify a lot of her actions constantly, whether it be the words of somebody else, whether it be her beliefs. But it's a slightly different situation now because we know that she does have some level of affection for Janine. That has been there. And so now experiencing this situation where she almost lost something that she cared about. I don't want to say I believe in Aunt Lydia, but I think that there is going to be a progression there. And I think more than anything else, I believe in Ann Dowd. I want Ann Dowd on every single television show. She's amazing on The Leftovers. She's amazing. She's just awesome in everything. So I'm really hoping this means a big Aunt Lydia story, because there's been a couple of seasons where she's just been kind of there.
Yeah, I've always sort of thought that if there was anyone that would ever get through to Aunt Lydia, it was going to be Janine. She's gotten herself so personally invested in Janine, which I think was sort of the not mistake, but the thing that happened to her that then sort of separated what her job was to what her humanity is and how much she cares for Janine. And, that Janine does rely on her as well. She's in a really tough world trying to survive. And Aunt Lydia can give her some protections if she plays by the rules. And she does play by the rules. So Aunt Lydia really, I think, looks at Janine as sort of like her biggest triumph, that it's like, man, I can do a really good job. Look at Janine, where we first started out, and she was really, sort of wild, and we had a really hard time, and look at how great she is now. And I did that, and my investment into her got her to this spot. So I think that there's a lot of investment for Lydia, and I think she's capable of some change, but I mean, she's still in Gilead. She's only going to have so much change. And in general, I actually wonder if there's going to be sort of more, implications of, some sort of punishment. Aunt Lydia's had handmaids killed. These two almost killed, like on her watch. Like, where's the repercussions here?
So that's got to be coming somewhere along the horizon. I don't know if that's something she's struggling with already, but I do sort of wonder a lot about. Eventually, I think we can presume that Esther and Janine are going to find their way out of this. And I think that it's going to be an interesting justification of what exactly Janine has done, because I think Esther felt so betrayed about this idea that, okay, you're not June, you're seemingly just okay to be here. I can't stand this to the point where I'm going to poison both of us. So it does make me sort of wonder now, if Lydia does start to change, and this is a byproduct of Janine's own actions, if Esther will start to kind of come around and be like, oh, this is why you were doing it. Okay, I saw you shake your head. Probably not, but I think there's a reason why Janine has done some of what she has done.
Okay, since you brought up Esther, Esther is a wife that's become a handmaid. So this is where my beef is coming in with Gilead deciding to send Serena away to be an ambassador out in Toronto for multiple reasons. One, they don't let anyone just leave Gilead. There's a use for every woman there. That seems to be the way of things. And if they were in a position where they just thought Serena's just too compromised, she's too wild, where she's too headstrong, we just can't really deal with her, they could have done all kinds of things to keep her there. They're not going to put her in a position where she feels like she has any kind of power at all. We're going to make you ambassador. I'm surprised she wasn't sitting there being like, what? What are you talking about? You're going to give me any sort of power at all or freedom at all, knowing what I know about the society? You're going to just send me to Toronto and give me a position of power? It's really, really weird, especially since she's pregnant. So in this society, handmaids are an important commodity. I said this in the last video too, of why I was kind of like, why wasn't Janine and Esther being watched? Because handmaids are like the very valued commodity of this whole society, the people who are able to bring them more children. You have Serena, who is pregnant, so you know that she is capable of producing children. You took Esther and put her in a handmaid's, role, so we know that wives can become handmaids. They will switch roles. So what I don't understand is why they would send out someone who's so headstrong into another country with all this information in a position of power, which they don't want the world to see, because that's not where they are with their society. They're trying to bring people in. Why isn't she turned into a handmaid? I don't get it.
I've got the answer, everybody. Don't worry. Here's the answer. Hulu didn't want that. It really feels like they were just like, all right, we need to make sure we get like Serena and June in a very close little place so that there can be constant conflict. How are we going to do this? Oh, we're going to find a way to ship Serena off to Toronto and, screw whether or not it makes sense for Gilead. It's like, that's
for sure.
The only thing I was kind of trying to sort of figure out in my head, and there wasn't enough like actual context on the show to really justify this, is that we know Commander Lawrence is a little bit of an outside thinker. We know that he doesn't exactly follow all the rules. Like, he's pretty much, even in this episode, you want to get married again? Even Serena's like trying to like hint at, hey, you can marry me. And he's just like, nope, I'm not doing it. And so he kind of like beats to his own drum, and he's a very weird character. I don't know what else to call him other than the weirdo of the show, because I never really know where his head is at all of the time. And clearly, I think he is someone who is responsible for pushing this in some shape or form, where he feels like there is value to having her out there, and he sort of kind of understands the way that there are other people they can influence. But at the same time, this is where I get confused by him. Why do you want people to specifically push this way of life that you don't even fully are a part of, that you are resisting in your own way, and yet here you are still being there?
How are you going to push this way of life with a woman being the person spreading the message? You have a society where they're not allowed to read, they're not allowed to speak up, they're not allowed to do anything, but then you're going to put her in a position of power. It just felt so weird. And I get that they wanted to make it that she had to go back and, be with June sort of thing, so there can be that back and forth. But there's another season coming. There would have been a way to still kind of craft that narrative if they had her be a handmaid, because June, it feels like now that she's met the actual Mayday and has seen what they're doing, this is where her heart is going to be at. And even her seeing someone going back into Gilead, she was like, wait, you're going back? You can just do that sort of thing? I think she's going to really sort of become part of Mayday and go back. And if Serena was a handmaid, that still would have been there. She doesn't need to be in power to have power. We saw that with June. June wasn't in power. She was a handmaid. She found a way to fight back on this.
The thing that could become interesting with Serena in Toronto, and I say could because there's no guarantee they're going to do this, but this is sort of if I was a producer on this show, which, hey, Bruce Miller, no, I'm just kidding. But no, if I was the producer on this show, this is something I would consider doing, because it's we know that, Serena's done some really horrific, unforgivable things. I don't think she's a redeemable character. However, I think Serena in her head thinks all sorts of things. And I think the one thing Serena cares about more so than Gilead or any of their particular rules is power. I think Serena, she wants to be the queen of the castle here. And I think she's been sent out. She's been given this title. She's been given this staff. It's not really what she wanted. And I think she's realizing here in this moment, even me, who has done the things that I have done for Gilead, because I am a woman, I am still put in a position where they don't still treat me seriously. They're still shipping me off somewhere else. They're still putting me in this position. It could lead to a spot where now that she's out of there in Toronto, instead of necessarily being just the mouthpiece for Gilead, she sort of evolves to being just the mouthpiece for herself. And this could be problematic still in a lot of ways, don't get me wrong, but it may not be fully Gilead adjacent.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Gilead is starting to open their doors to the world of this private society and showing people what they want people to see, sort of thing. So having Serena, who is sort of a bit uncontrollable, it's very dangerous what they've decided to do, letting her feel like she has a little bit of power. I get why that seems like a good idea. I mean, she just came back to Gilead and was like, I'm going to stay here. I think, I'm somebody here. And even though it's been kind of you're a wife that's now unwed, you're about to have a kid, you are still a woman, so you still don't have power. And, what is it that you think that you can do from your position at this point? And yeah, she tried to be hey, Commander Lawrence. He was like, oh, absolutely no. But I think she thought she was bigger than she was. And I think a lot of it came from her getting that funeral for Fred and being in the spotlight and being on TV and having Hannah beside her. I think she was just feeling herself so much that by the time it was hey, it's time to go back to Toronto, she's like, nah, I'm going to stay here. I think I can do some stuff here, sort of thing. It's just you have forgotten where you are.
In the great words of Michael Scott, how the turntables, Serena. You don't get what you want. You go back to Gilead, you go back to Gilead, then you go back to Toronto, then you get to see June outside your car door being don't you ever be near. It's good for you, June, with being like this resourceful and this like immediately on the ball here.
Yeah, well, it's a little different here. You don't have the eyes on you all the time. You can figure things out. She does have Mayday around now. She has resources to do that. And I think she just wanted Serena to know straight up, like, you are not safe here under any circumstances. I can get to you, and I can get to you this easily.
One of the, I think, other probably underrated parts of this episode is just the conversation between June and Nick. Like, they've got such a history, and it's just it was really fascinating to me seeing them sort of go back and forth. Where, you know, Nick in his own way, like he understands a lot about Gilead. I don't think he's fully brainwashed, but listening to him talk about, you know, I have a wife now. I'm like doing this because it's a part of what's expected. He's gonna have a big role to play. I just don't know exactly what it is yet.
Yeah, and especially since his wife, Rose, does know a lot of stuff about what's kind of going on and what, you know, June, you know, about June and stuff like that. And that's why I think it was an important conversation for him to have. He even had said, you know, let me tell June myself that I'm actually married. And when they were talking, and she was like, you know, would I like her? Yeah, I think you would like her. She knows about you. And that sort of heartbreak between them and love between them. It was a tough conversation.
Yeah.
Especially since she finally learned what the purple plum dress means, which was her daughter is getting ready to become a wife, which is another difficult position. All the women are put in very difficult positions in Gilead, but, you know, you're going to put her in a position where she's going to be the person holding down the next handmaid for her husband, that it's just a position she doesn't want her daughter to be in. That's why I think we're going in a direction where she's going to get deeper into Mayday so she can get her daughter out of there.
For sure. I mean, she was, even before all this, she was already driven because of just everything that happened. And
love.
And now you've got another further reason for revenge. And, you know, when June has revenge on her mind, we have already seen exactly what happens with that. Just ask Fred.
Yeah.
So I think we are going to be set up now for a really fascinating next few episodes, sort of navigating what feels on paper to be just sort of this June versus Gilead war, though I'm still really curious where Serena ends up with all of this down the road as well.
Well, yeah, especially if she ends up with Mark. You know, like, he's in a position of power. There's long been sort of longing glances and all that sort of stuff. It was it didn't like super cross the line this episode, but it's getting more and more intense. This is a relationship that I am not interested in.
Really?
But Serena, now that she's back in Toronto, is going to have to play that card.
Yeah, I they've clearly set all this up for a reason. I am with you. It's no offense to Mark. It's just like Serena just on her own is a compelling enough villain and a compelling enough character that just the relationship with her that I care about. It's obviously a very different relationship, but her and June. I want to see these two really go to battle, but we will be here to talk all about that. So much more moving forward. Hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any other coverage of The Handmaid's Tale moving forward. Follow us on Instagram at Matt and Jess TV, and we will see you here next time.